Hi, everybody. Madison here with Health by Ratio. My team and I of licensed physical therapists, corrective exercise specialists, functional health coaches, and myself work together and create customized programs for our clients to holistically help them get out of recurring injuries and recurring tweaks and chronic pain and move in there and toward their functional health goals so that they can get back to moving to full ranges of stable motion and get back to the activities that they love to do. Well, in this video today, we're going to talk about shoulder mobility and recovering around things like rotator cuff injuries, labrum tears, impingements, that kind of stuff. But before I even get into that, I want to start off really just saying that if anyone is interested in getting some free coaching from myself and my team, on learning how your body moves and stabilizes from head to toe and where imbalances are occurring or where there's certain tightnesses, tissue restrictions, weaknesses that are impacting how you move. And you want to learn how to move back toward full ranges of stable motion through which proper mobility techniques and what kind of exercises you need to do. We do this all for free. And we will put a link to our calendar underneath this video where you can select a day and time that works best for you, and we'd be happy to help. So feel free to check that out. But now, going into our topic today on this shoulder health, the shoulder recovery, shoulder mobility, I'm going to show a couple of my favorite stretches in just a second, but I want to talk about kind of where these things come from and obviously why they're impactful. So, this shoulder injuries and recovery is such a common thing that we help with many of our clients. Like anything from our clients like Tamara or Mark who are using their shoulders in their actual work, like as a hairdresser and as a chiropractor, and obviously any other kind of like we work with carpenters, we work with mechanics, all kinds of stuff that are using their arms like crazy throughout their job. And so wear and tear on the shoulder occurs. Then also like our musicians and our tennis players like Peter who like to have like a decompress and like to enjoy their time playing an instrument or playing a sport that involves a lot of work around the shoulder. And then also just like our avid exercisers that are like John that are like to lift, like to strength train, but they often are doing upper body techniques that can wear and tear the shoulder. And so we have these restrictions that occur and they limit us on the activities that we love to do. So how do we fix this? Where's it coming from and how do we fix it? Well, first and foremost, it normally the shoulder injuries stem from lack of ranges of motion to the shoulder girdle that occur over time. And then the shoulder has to start compensating and moving in ways that it's not designed. And many of us know these postural positions that impact us. It's the bad posture that we're in when we're sitting or standing where we're rolling forward and we're compressing forward. And these things happen because we spend a lot of our chunk of our lives, or I should say childhoods, growing up studying, writing, sitting at a desk. We get lazy with our posture, we're rolled forward, and then we transition into driving and then sitting in front of our computers and holding our phones, and all those things roll us inward, roll us inward. And so we get these really overactive internal rotators and chest muscles that are pulling us this direction. And then we get into activities that often involve a whole lot of moving the arm forward into internal rotation, whether we're swinging golf clubs, whether we're swinging rackets, whether we're punching, whether we're doing exercise like push ups and burpees and planks and all that kind of stuff. Even yoga, which is an amazing form of exercise, it's very shoulder dominant, anteriorly shoulder dominant. There's a ton of engagement that happens through all the planking and all the different holds of the arms that occur. So we get these tightnesses that start to pull us in this direction. And the shoulder is a really shallow ball and socket joint versus the hip is a deep ball and socket joint. Like the hip is sitting way up in there. Well, the shoulder is shallow and it's designed to be able to slip in and out of that ball and socket just a little bit. It's what gives this thing so much incredible range of motion in comparison to the rest of the joints in the body. Well, if we constantly are in this position, our shoulder is no longer sitting in its groove of where it should be in that ball and socket. It is positioned a little bit out or a little bit up or a combination. And when it's doing this, we have all these tissues that are wrapping and connecting around it that are also inserting themselves in between the actual ball and socket joint and the little AC joint, which is right above the little canopy bone that sits right above the shoulder there. Well, we start to have all those tissues that are wrapping around it and on top of it start to get either poked from behind or they start getting compressed from under where the ball and socket of the shoulder starts pushing up into that AC joint. And so now as we use this thing and we move it, we start grinding the tissue or we're poking the tissue from behind. We're creating this friction that tears it up, that wears it down, that obviously aggravates it over time. So how we got to fix this thing is first we got to mobilize these restrictions that are pulling us in this direction. So we got to open this thing up. We got to stop the tension that's pulling us here. And that can stem from some specific shoulder stretches and chest stretches that I'm going to demonstrate in a sec. It also can be some great manual manipulation. So, like actually massaging in and breaking up this tissue with some trigger point balls or a Theragun or getting a great sports therapy massage or something along those lines of treatment. And that can help break this area up. That's really, really key and something that we're hugely passionate about with our clients and teaching them how to self mobilize their body. And then also, we got to work not just on the shoulder, though. We got to work on the thoracic spine because the thoracic spine is what the shoulders sit on. And if our scapulas and our thoracic spine are compressed and rolled forward and the ribs are all tight, then that's also going to perpetually move us in this direction. So we need to address not just the ball and socket of the shoulder itself and the tissues right around it, but we got to get everything around this upper torso nice and mobile and prevent these bad postures from occurring that cause us to put more tension in the shoulder than is needed. And then once we address those mobility concerns, we got to stabilize this thing. We got to teach our body to go back toward in this to hold our shoulders in this proper position where they sit stable and the scapulas are able to kind of lock and support our shoulders in place and all the supporting tissues are firing like our big back muscles and the supportive muscle tissues and the external rotators of the shoulder, all that good stuff is able to support ourselves, and that can be done through a variety of exercises. But first, let's get into the mobilizations. So, like I said, you can do some self manipulation to this. That's really important. And as a matter of fact, if you guys have a Theragun or a trigger point ball or something like that, then I would recommend getting into the deltoid, your chest, underneath the collarbone, getting above the shoulder into the upper traps, getting underneath the armpit, around the lats, and around the side of the ribs here. Get into all these areas that are really important, as well as getting around and in between all of our, like around our scapulas, around the actual inside, underneath, outside, over top edge of those shoulder blades will help mobilize this thing like crazy. Then when we do these stretches, we're going to be able to pull open that much easier. Now, the first one is we got to do is chest stretch. That's a really important thing to be doing. We got to pull these things open. We can do that with just a door frame. We're going to just like walk through a door frame and just let our hands go straight through. If you have, and by the way, all these stretches we want to do only if it's a comfortable hurt so good kind of stretch, not creating pain, some type of twingy, sharp pain in the shoulder, then we want to ease up. Like for some of us, we can go into a shoulder stretch right here and it's going to feel great for this chest. But for others, this high position is going to hurt us. We're going to have to bring the hands down, allow the elbows to drop below the shoulders, and that's a much less intense chest stretch that we can do. If we have access to a super band or resistance band that we can anchor up, which is what I personally prefer, I like to get my wrists in this and then just walk straight out a little bit so that this is pulling me straight back into a nice big chest stretch there. So that's the first and foremost. Then we also want to increase our internal rotation of our shoulder. That's the area that gets really tight, so we roll forward a lot. So how we can increase the internal rotation of our shoulder is we can get our hand or arm, I should say, in literally internal rotation. And then if we find like a door frame or a pillar or a post, something like this, we can position our shoulder up at the front of it, up against it, and just lean into it and allow that the pressure of us leaning into it and gently relaxing the shoulder back to allow us to retract the shoulder blade while staying in this internal position. But again, we can do this with a resistance band. So I can loop this thing through my, like underneath my arm and over top my arm. I can bring that hand up to whatever's comfortable for me, up onto the small of my back in internal rotation. And then I'm going to step forward and get some nice tension pulling this of my shoulder straight back as I do so. And it's just this retraction while I'm in internal rotation is really working those internal rotators of that shoulder and pulling them open. So again, hanging out there, I should have said for the chest stretch and for this stretch, hanging out for 30 to 45 seconds. Just nice deep breath work to allow us to relax into this position. Then we got to also get into the overhead range of motion. Many of us don't get our arms fully overhead and we get restricted, and like I talked about, where the rib cage starts to get compressed and the muscles around it, like the intercostals and the lats and all that kind of stuff, start to lose their range of motion, and that contributes to this rolled forward position. So how we can stretch that is we could do this with putting our hands just up against a wall and leaning forward and just kind of letting our, with keeping our elbows straight, letting our chest drop down toward the ground. And then we can kind of lean to one side or lean to the other so that we're shifting side to side as we're doing this. And that is going to pull kind of this whole muscle complex open and give us a nice good stretch. Or we can, again, do this with a resistance band with one or both arms. I'm going to do this with two arms at the same time. I'm just going to wrap it around my wrists. And then from here, I'm going to step back far enough so I got some good tension pulling me up. And I'm just going to sit back into like a nice little half squat here. Let myself lean over, let my arms get pulled up a little bit. I can rotate a little bit to one side, rotate a little bit to the other side. I can lean just side to side, moving in and out of this, and just feel into whatever is that hurt so good stretch. And again, breathing into this for about 30 to 45 seconds with some nice diaphragmatic breathing to help me relax the body and relax tension into there. Again, only working into positions that feel good, not sorenesses and tightness, sharp pains that might occur. This should feel like a nice long expansion of the shoulder. We should feel nice and loose afterwards. Now, we got to stabilize this thing. We got to strengthen up our big back muscles that are often underused and allow us to sit in a neutral position. And so we can do any kind of rowing exercise, basically. Any pulling motion that we can think of that's going to pull something, like either doing pull-ups or a like TRX row or an actual resistance band row or a dumbbell row or anything along those lines. Any pull is going to help us retract those shoulders and strengthen up the external rotators of the rotator cuff. If we're just sitting and we're on the computer or whatever, or we're in the car, we can even be proactive about this there. One, being mindful of how we're sitting. We don't want, like, we want to be conscious of when we get into this lazy position to be like, okay, let's sit back upright again. Let's pull those shoulders back a little bit. But we can also do some external rotators, external rotations of the shoulder. We're just bend the elbow to 90 degrees, and then we kick that hand out to the side by rotating our shoulder. And as we do so, we want to think about pulling the shoulder blades back each time. So we're not just keeping the shoulders in place and just moving the hand out to the side. We're actually trying to externally rotate and retract the shoulder at the same time. So we're trying to pull those shoulder blades back. And you can do that against a resistance band if you wanted. This would be way too heavy, but like with a light resistance band or TheraBand, we could do something like that. But even just body weight, just sitting in place while you're driving and just cranking out 20 or 30 of these, you'll start to feel those external rotators around here in the shoulder start to burn out. They get tired. It's effective. It just takes a lot higher reps to do so. But that's an easy thing that you can do just while you're sitting on a Zoom call, and you can start to strengthen up your shoulders and teach these things to stabilize. And then we want to be mindful when we're actually doing our activities throughout the day to, like, if let's say we're gardening and stuff like that, we don't want to let our shoulders consistently protract forward as we do it. It's okay if it does it a little bit, like, and once in a while, like, the shoulders are designed to protract a bit, but that shouldn't be our natural go-to tendency every single time we go to reach something. We should be able to garden and reach for something while keeping my shoulder in a stable position as I pull it back. I don't have to protract and roll forward all the way every single time. Now, if I'm needing to overextend and reach, that's okay. But in general, I'm going to keep the shoulder in a much safer position if I can keep my shoulder blades, my scapulas, a little bit retracted. That's going to engage my back muscles that support this shoulder as opposed to protracting, which relaxes these guys and now puts all the tension around the rotator cuff and anterior delts and all the muscles that coincide there. So that goes a really long way in helping the shoulder recover. Now, we also, for those of us that have dealt with shoulder injuries, the other big aspect is sleeping, and that's actually something that I'm going to cover in a totally different video, because we need to cover a number of different things for sleeping, and it's something that we talk about with our clients a lot, where we'll look at how they position themselves on their bed with their pillow, obviously on top of their cover, so we can see what they're doing. But like we take a look at what they're doing so we can see where their shoulder is positioned and how they need to either use different pillows or how they need to lay differently, or position their body differently with their pillow, so that the shoulder can be in a much safer position and we're not compressing it and irritating it all night long when we sleep. So that's another facet that we'll cover in a future video. But guys, if you have any questions on this, or if you have any questions on other aspects of the body and you want us to cover those on some future posts, future videos, please submit them. We're always looking for ideas on what you guys want more or less info on. So feel free to share that. Or like I said, if you want some free one-on-one help, we're going to attach a link to our calendar where you can schedule your first of 2 free calls. The first call, you just are connecting with my team and I for about 20 or 30 minutes, and we're figuring out what your background is, what your body has been through, what your health and fitness goals are. And then from there, we connect over video, you and I, and we go through a full analysis on your second call, that's also free, on how your body's moving, what its ranges of motion are, and determine how and why it's doing what it's doing. And then most importantly, what kind of exercises and mobility techniques you need to do to fix this thing. So again, if you're interested, take advantage. And outside of that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. We'll talk to you soon.